Welcome to Being a Successful Leader with Carl Welty. Carl is a leadership pioneer with years of challenging leadership and consulting experience. Here's Carl with some valuable insights, practical and proven methods for being a successful leader.
Greetings, everybody. Carl Welty here, your host for the ongoing podcast series, Being a Successful Leader. We have a podcast every week, lasting from a half hour or 15 minutes to a half hour, and on topics of leadership. The series is built around my three leadership imperatives, if you will. Number one, it all starts with you as a leader, so it has to do with you being a self-aware and skillful leader is principle number, or leadership imperative number one. Number two is then you have to have a sound strategy about just who you are, your identity, what you stand for, core values, and your direction, which is your vision, your strategies and your actions, and then the execution phase. And then the third of the three imperatives is to have a culture of commitment versus compliance. Culture of commitment versus compliance. You need people to rally around your sound strategy and to work together to go to new horizons. Okay, so number one in the imperative is being a self-aware and skillful leader. Number two is a sound strategy. And number three then is to build that culture of commitment. So anyway, the resources you have in addition to us talking about it like here today is to also go to the past episodes, which you can find on the host is webtalkradio.net, webtalkradio.net. And you'll find all the past episodes. This is the 44th episode. You can find all the rest by going to that site. And when you get there, you go over to channels, then scroll down to leadership and the workplace, and then click on my icon, Being a Successful Leader, and it'll show you all past episodes. Just click on any one or several that you want to revisit or visit for the first time. Also, the other resource you have to supplement and complement what we talk about on these podcasts is my books, 3 books, one for each of the leadership imperatives. And you can find them on welty.com. Scroll over to leadership resources, click on books, and you'll see the 3 books there and how to order them from Barnes & Noble, Amazon, or the publisher, Ewing's Publishing. So it makes a nice combination. We talk about it in kind of summary fashion. If you want to dig deeper or to review, you have the resources there for you. Kind of like how that turns out. Today's topic is stages of organizational growth and strategic implications. Stages of organizational growth and the strategic implications of the various stages that you need to be aware of. We'll discuss the stages of organizational growth by going through the various stages by going through the following pieces, the agenda, if you will. I have an organizational growth principle, which we'll start off with, and then we'll look at the drivers of organizational growth, go on to the dimensions, what's all involved there. I'm going to give you a model to help you understand the stages of growth. And then we're going to end up with also embed the strategic implications inside the model. So start off with my principle, look at the drivers of organizational growth, the dimensions of organizational growth model, and then the strategic implications of the various stages of organizational growth. I think you'll find it quite interesting, give you a nice overview, and it'll serve you now and in the future as you look at your organization as a whole, if you're the leader of that organization, or an organizational unit, the unit, the division, the area, or whatever that you head up as a leader. Okay, let's start off with my principle of organizational growth. My principle is to be successful and perhaps survive, an organization cannot stand still. Maintaining the status quo is not an option. An organization needs to grow, maybe not grow in terms of size like revenue and employees and territory and that sort of thing, But growth can occur in being successful in terms of continually getting better processes and strategies and those sorts of things. So growth can be measured in size, but also measured in getting better at what you do. But you can't stand still. That's my principle. You got to keep moving. Okay, what are some of the drivers of organizational growth? Well, one is the business, the industry, or the organization you're a part of. We know that there are like fast growth businesses and industries. Tech companies, electronic industry tend to be rapid growing if they get off the ground and survive and move forward. Slow growth would be maybe utilities, small commercial establishments, and so forth. No rightness or wrongness with that. It's just that it's the nature of the business industry or the organization you're part of. Another driver, besides the business industry organization you're part of, is competition. That's obvious. The competition drives the rate of organizational growth and the speed and the trajectory. A third of the driver would be leadership determination. That would be the founder or the leader of the company or the division or whatever. And perhaps some are very zealous about growing fast and getting out of the starting blocks and getting big or whatever. And others may not. They want to stay small. But even if you want to stay small, you still, as I say in my principle, you can't stand still. You got to keep moving, if you will, to stay ahead of things. Let's look at the dimensions. We looked at the principle, the drivers. Let's look at the dimensions now of organizational growth. One is the size. Kind of mentioned that already. The size in terms of product services offered, the revenue, the workforce, the territory, and the size can grow there. And the different forms, if you will, of size, besides just growing from within, is mergers and acquisitions. Another couple of things here is what we call horizontal integration and vertical integration, whereby the horizontal integration could be, let's say we're a plumbing company, and we add off to the side heat, what they call HAV, heating, air conditioning, and ventilation. So they're kind of on the same plane. They relate to one another, kind of moving horizontally. That's one way of adding size, if that's what to do in terms of staying ahead of the competition and being viable. Vertical integration is, just as the term implies, that's where instead of going horizontally and adding to A, B, and C, and so forth, you go vertically and go 1 + 2 + 3. Let's say that you're a construction company, and you decide to vertically integrate by adding a design feature. So now you become a design contractor or contractor designer. So that's other ways of growing size in terms of enlarging kind of the bubble that you operate in. There are other things like alliances and partnering with other firms, other ways of growing size, if that's the thing to do for you. Okay, so one dimension is size. Another is continuous improvement. As I mentioned earlier, maybe you don't want to get large, or maybe you don't really need, you still need to move, but you don't need to necessarily want to grow or have to grow in terms of size. And so you're getting better and adapting, even if not increasing in size. Things like innovation, technology, processes, physical plant, making things better, not standing still, improving things. Also, your policies, your practices and procedures need to be changed, maybe updated to keep pace with where your organization is in the current mode. Okay, let's talk about the model I mentioned earlier. It's a simple model, but it can be very profound and beneficial, valuable to you in kind of getting a feel for what we're talking about, organizational growth stages and strategic implications of each. I'd like you to take a piece of paper, and I have this model in the book on making and fulfill your dreams as a leader, but we don't need to refer to that right now. But just on a piece of paper, draw a vertical line, and label that growth, and then a horizontal line and label that time. So growth is your vertical line, time is your horizontal line. And then we're going to draw what's called a sigmoid, S-I-G-M-O-I-D, if you ever never heard of that term before. Sigmoid curve. It's kind of like a bell-shaped curve or an S curve. And you start, let's say, down at the corner of your growth and time axes, and just it doesn't have to be perfect. Just draw a line kind of going up the hill, if you will. Go up the hill and then round it off at the top. So your S is going up there, kind of an S on its side, if you will, going up the hill, round it off at the top, and then start to draw an arrow downward. And then at the top there of your mound, draw another arrow that goes down the hill and up. So you have one arrow going downhill, another arrow right at the top that goes around and then up. We'll get to that in a second. Okay, hopefully that's somewhat clear to you. What happens? Let me describe that arrow at the top, and then we'll get to the stages. As an organization gets to maturity, starts to near their maturity, in other words, being everything they could be in their market and that sort of thing, and they need to continue to grow in one way or another, they need to maybe reinvent or renew itself. And that's where, if they don't do that, that top of the knoll up there, the top of our hill, and they starts to decline, they'll be down a downward spiral. And so at that point, then we need to think about how we stick to our knitting, but what can we do differently in terms of size or improving to stay in the ball game. And that's what's called renewal. So at the top of your mound, you can go downhill, decline, or you can start to go uphill again and renew. And we're talking about, the key components of that, the strategic implications to do that. So that's at the top, maturity. And one of the keys here is to try to, if you ever get to that point, to try to predict or to know ahead of time before you start to decline, to get into the mode of renewing or reinventing yourself before the curve starts to go downward. All right. And that pertains to organizational units as well, your division, territory, what have you. Now let's walk through each of these stages. Let me complete I should give you the stages. We talked about maturity. That's the top one there. Okay. So go back to your diagram. You got your growth axis, your vertical. You got your time axis, your horizontal. And then down at the bottom of your S on the side curve, you have startup. That's the beginning of your division, beginning of your company, beginning of your organization. Maybe you're the founder, or maybe that you're starting up a new territory, but it's the startup. And then you get going, assuming you survive and things are going well. And then there's a growth phase. And the growth phase, again, as we mentioned, it could be very, very steep, depending upon the nature of the business, the industry, your organization, and a big trajectory, or it could be very, very not a very steep trajectory and kind of slow. So it could be fast or slow. It could be kind of moderate or it could be very steep, again, depending on business, industry, and your organization. And then at the top, we mentioned already, maturity. And that's where you get to the top of your little hill, your dome, what have you, your mountain maybe. So you have startup down the left-hand corner, then a line going up, you have growth, and that's usually a long-term thing. And you may or may not reach maturity, but that's where things really level off, and you may need to, as we said earlier, rethink things. And then you could have a renewal or a decline. All right, let's look at the strategic implications, and I've got three domains, if you will, or three components that we can look at each of these stages, and this should be of value to you. The three that we'll look at is having a sound strategy, organization design, and approaches to management. And we've talked about sound strategy. In fact, that's my book, Making Even Fulfill Your Dreams as a Leader. And a lot of the first episodes of this series talked about the various pieces in developing, formulating, and executing a sound strategy. And then there's the book. Approaches to management, we talked about that. It's in one of the previous episodes, and I'll review that in a second. and then organization design. So sound strategy, organization design, approaches to management are three lenses that will take a look at three potential strategic implications at the various stages. Okay, so let's look at sound strategy, just to review. Sound strategy, and it's all contained in what I call my strategic framework, and the book Making Fulfill Dreams as a Leader. And if you read that or tuned in on some of the early episodes, you'll realize there are three dimensions. There's the identity dimension, the direction dimension, and the execution dimension. They're all critical. The identity dimension consists of who we are, why we exist, and what we stand for. Why we exist and what we stand for. The identity is purpose, and the identity is core values. And again, we went into depth in that, and please consult the book on this and how to do that correctly. Then the direction component, whereas identity is fairly timeless, we need to surge out now and be viable in the market and have a direction, which is having a vision. Where are we going? What does it look like when we're there? I call that an actionable, translatable vision. Very, very critical versus just an abstract overstatement, overarching statement. So we have a strategy, and then we followed it up with we have a vision and followed with strategies, a strategic path, if you will, which we turn into a master plan, which is our continual guide that you and your leadership team uses to move forward, and then actions. So that's the direction component, and that's meant to be a ongoing wheel, if you will, a strategy machine. Whereas the identity is somewhat timeless, your strategy, strategic path and master plan keeps changing as you accomplish things, decide not to do things, new opportunities, challenges emerge. You need to keep that master plan, if you will, churning. And then there's the execution, where many organizations fall down. And that's you and your leadership team exerting the right kinds of modeling and behavior. And then there's some key mechanisms, helpful mechanisms that are important there too. And again, that's all in the book. So that's the sound strategy that you need to, that's with you throughout. Really critical in the startup phase. That should get off the right foot. Really, you and your leadership team or founders, whatever, really think through what you're all about and what's going on. I call that a situation analysis. And then where you're going, what it looks like when there, and how you're going to get there. And then as you go up to, if you survive and continue, as you go up to different stages, then you need to continually enliven, if you will, revisit and live your strategic framework. Okay. Organization design is just that. It's how you arrange and relate the work to be done. About organization charts, organizational structure. And next episode, I'm going to devote to organization design. I have for you some organization design principles, fundamental truths about organizational design. And then I'm going to acquaint you with a process, very, very good process that incorporates some of the tools we've talked about during the series on how to, you and your leadership team, how to take a look at various organizational design alternatives, if you will, and decide on the best one if and when you need to maybe change the boxes around a little bit. So sound strategy is a part of each of the stages to look at organization design. And the last one I'm going to talk about is approaches to management. We talked about it in an earlier episode recently. I've got 4 approaches to management. There's no best one. They're all appropriate given the stage, if you will, the stage of your organizational growth. And the first one is the doer technician. And then there's the conductor, and then there's the coach, and then there's the working leader. Okay. And we'll visit each of these as we go through the various stages. Okay, let's go to the stages now and see how these 3 strategic implications play out. Some of the highlights here. The startup phase. As I mentioned already, here's where you need to really formulate and execute your sound strategy. And we discussed what that was. And then you need to continuously live it, visit it, redo it as you go through your organizational life cycle. But especially important at this first stage. So if you're in that stage, be sure you bone up on that. And again, my book will show you just how to do it. Then there, in a startup, organizational design is usually a functional, as contrast with a divisional organizational setup. You're starting, and like two brothers I know, they had to turn into a major swimming pool business. And okay, Frank, why don't you take the mechanical and I'll do the electrical, and together we'll do the planning. And that's usually how it starts out, you know. And then as the organization grows, it devolves into functional devolution, maybe then eventually gets into divisions. So organizational design. Approaches to management at the startup, it's going to be a doer technician, whether it's this new territory you're opening or unless you already inherit a large size group, you'll be rolling up your sleeves and doing a lot of the work yourself, which is appropriate. Okay, now we move to growth, and this could be very long, years, maybe more than a few years, decades even, or it could be short of that in a very swift growing type of business. In terms of the growth stage, sound strategy, the identity is relatively timeless, so that probably won't change a lot. It'll probably stay the same in terms of why you exist and what your core values are. The purpose again there is to there may not be, but probably not, changing customer clients, your value proposition, or the scope that you operate in. It could be that your scope changes, your territory widens, or you take in another scope or bigger scope, or maybe your client base changes a little bit, so you may need to tweak your purpose statement there. Your core values, again, remember what that was. That's the essential and enduring beliefs based on key business ideas that guided your organization with your everyday thinking and behavior, key business ideas. And that's what makes it different from the nice, noble sounding, we love everybody, our customers are great type of worthless core values. And it could be that your key business ideas maybe shift a little bit, change, and maybe need to tweak your definition of your core values. Again, core values is just a handful of key values, essential and enduring beliefs. Or they may not change. Your direction should change. I mentioned your strategy machine. You're continually churning that strategy machine as you come up with new strategies and celebrate successful strategies that have been accomplished and drop others perhaps. And I mentioned the situation analysis, which is a very good technique to once in a while you and your leadership team take a reading. What's going on in our external environment and our internal environment, capability to address these opportunities and challenges in our external environment. So you want to do that periodically, and then you alter your strategic path. And from that, the master plan that's derived from your strategic path. So sound strategy really works well for you at all stages of your life cycle. Organization design, probably initially a functional devolution. You add to the functions, have people report to the functions, maybe add a function. You used to do it outside. Now you bring the function like accounting. Now you bring it in, you have a finance VP or something like that. You bring it in-house. And then eventually, perhaps if the organization grows, especially in size, you're going to have your functional setup, perhaps in your headquarters, and then you'll have divisional, which could be territories or products and services or customer and clients. You organize around territory, products or services, customer clients, or if you're a construction firm, it could be projects, organized around projects. Again, the headquarters remains pretty much functionally organized. Now, approaches to management, as you go up this long, perhaps growth stage, you'll shift maybe from doer technician to conductor. You're still there calling most of the signals, but you're not as hands-on as you once were, earlier down in your growth phase or stage. And now you've delegated more, but you're still pretty much calling the shots. And then as you, let's say you grow more, especially in size now, then you may shift to conductor to coach. Not so much hands-on, not so much calling all the signals, and you delegate a lot of the responsibility and authorities, and you're still there as a resource. You're still on top of things, but you're more there asking and aiding and coaching versus telling. Okay, very tough shift for many leaders who, especially when they were in the early stages, if you will, of the business, and now they relinquish things, is a major chasm, if you will, between conductor and then coach. And it's very hard for many to bridge that gap, a whole different mindset and so forth. Review the materials again, especially in my book, Building Commitment on performance coaching, and what it is and what it's not, and processes and things of this nature. And then let's say you keep growing and growing, and you go from coach to working leader. And now your role is less inside the organization versus outside. You go from COO, if you will, like on the top of an organization, to CEO, or the head of your division. You more of your time and effort is outside, blocking and tackling and clearing the way, getting rid of obstacles, all that stuff, so your folks can do the job. You're still involved inside, but a lot of your attention's outside, and they need you there with that focus. So those are the four approaches. You can see how they play out as if you do ascend as a leader through the various pieces of a growth cycle there, a growth stage. Maturity is the final one here. Now, we talked about this already, just to review. Now you're at the acme, if you will, the top of your hill. Not much going with, you need to keep moving. So how are we going to do that? You pretty much petered out, if you will, in terms of what you're doing presently, but you got to keep moving. So again, how are you going to take a look at renewing, reinvigorating your business there, and not to get into a downward spiral with a decline? And again, that's where the strategic framework is a necessity, just how you thought about way back when in startup. Now you got to rethink that in terms of clear new thinking about your identity, your direction, and your execution. Need for very, very strong leadership, but you need the tools to help you there. Okay, that concludes our quick trip through the stages of organizational growth and the strategic implications of each of the stages, and the three lenses that we look through of things we talked about in past episodes in terms of the organization. We're talking about organization design next time, but sound strategy and the approaches to managing. So hopefully that's very, very useful to you. Again, we'll cover organization design next time. All right, great model, simple but profound, and then you really make it come alive by incorporating some of these implications and the tools for that we talked about. Next week, I mentioned already, organization design. And that's our topic. And we'll take a look at some of the principles, fundamental truths regarding organization design. That should be useful for you. And then a process that you can use with you and your leadership team. Again, organization design many times is a kind of, many leaders think of it as an elixir, a magic potion. Things aren't going well. You shake the box and change everything around and things will get better. No, but we'll talk about that more next week. Meantime, you take care of yourself and we'll see you.